My wife told me to trust her. I should have asked what she meant. The detective slid a manila folder across the metal table, and I watched my wedding photo fall out. Melissa's smile was perfect in that picture, the kind of smile that made strangers at grocery stores tell us we looked happy. Detective Raymond Ortiz had been working fraud cases for 19 years, and he looked at that photo like he'd seen it 1,000 times before. "Mr. Sullivan," he said, "your wife emptied your accounts 3 days ago. All of them." I laughed. Actually laughed, because Melissa was at home right now, probably folding laundry or watching that cooking show she loved. We'd had breakfast together that morning. She'd kissed me goodbye. The detective didn't laugh back. He opened the folder wider, and I saw bank statements with my signature on transfers I'd never made. I saw emails from my account that I'd never sent. I saw a lease agreement for an apartment in Denver, a city I'd visited exactly once, for a conference, and hated. My hands started doing this thing where they wouldn't stay still. "There's been a mistake," I said, but my voice sounded far away, like I was listening to someone else say it. I'd been married to Melissa for 8 years when she first mentioned the investment opportunity. We were in our kitchen on a Wednesday evening, and she was cutting vegetables for stir-fry while I paid bills on my laptop. "David," she'd said, using my full name instead of the usual babe, which should have been my first clue, "I need you to trust me on something." She explained that her colleague, Amy Thornton, had a brother who worked in commercial real estate development. There was a ground floor opportunity in a new shopping complex going up outside Austin. The returns were projected at 35% over 18 months. We'd need to liquidate some assets and take out a small loan against the house, but Amy's brother had done this successfully 6 times before. Melissa showed me glossy brochures with architectural renderings. She had spreadsheets. She had testimonials from other investors. Her enthusiasm was infectious, the way it always was when she believed in something. I'd watched her turn our garage sale hobby into a small online business that cleared $15,000 last year. She had instincts. "How much are we talking?" I'd asked. "Initially, 80,000. But if we really commit, we could go up to 200 and have generational wealth, David. College funds fully covered, early retirement, everything we've talked about." I'd looked at her across our kitchen, this woman I'd known since college, who'd held my hand through my father's funeral, who'd surprised me with a puppy on our 5th anniversary because she knew I'd been sad. And I'd said yes. The detective was still talking, but I couldn't focus on his words. I kept thinking about that conversation 3 months ago. How natural it had felt. How Melissa had handled all the paperwork because I was swamped at work with the Kaufman project deadline. She'd brought me documents to sign, always with a glass of my favorite whiskey, always after a long day when I was too tired to read the fine print. "Just initial here, babe. This is the good stuff, the future stuff." I'd trusted her. Why wouldn't I? She was my wife. The detective was showing me something else now. Security footage from our bank. Timestamp, 9:15 a.m., 3 days ago. I'd been in a project meeting at work. The woman on the screen looked like Melissa. Same blonde hair, same height, same black pea coat she'd bought last winter. She was withdrawing the maximum daily amount from our savings account. "That's not possible," I said. I talked to her that morning. She said she was going to yoga and then meeting her sister for lunch. Detective Ortiz pulled out his phone and played a voicemail. My own voice filled the small interrogation room. "Hey, honey, running late at the office. Don't wait up. Love you." Except I'd never left that message. "Voice synthesis software," the detective explained. "Consumer grade. You can buy it online for $79. My phone was buzzing in my pocket. I pulled it out with shaking hands. 17 missed calls from my brother Keith, 12 from my mother, 23 text messages. The most recent one from Keith just said, "Call me now." I looked at Detective Ortiz. "Can I?" He nodded. I stepped into the hallway and called Keith back. He answered on the first ring. "Jesus Christ, David, where have you been?" "At the police station. Melissa." I know about Melissa. David, it's worse than that. Mom's in the hospital." The fluorescent lights in the hallway started doing this strobing thing, or maybe that was just my vision. "What happened?" "She fell. Or, the doctors aren't sure if she fell or if she had a stroke first. They found her at the bottom of her stairs this morning. Mrs. Kowalski from next door called 911. David, she'd been trying to call you. She left you 8 voicemails last night. She said Melissa came by the house yesterday asking about the college fund bonds Grandpa left you." I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor. Those bonds. I'd completely forgotten about them. They'd matured 2 years ago, worth about $90,000. Mom had been holding them in her safe deposit box because I'd never gotten around to collecting them. "David, you still there?" "Yeah," I managed. "Which hospital?" St. Vincent's Medical Center was 45 minutes across town. I drove there in a fog, Detective Ortiz's card burning a hole in my pocket. He'd told me not to leave the state. He'd told me an investigation was opening. He'd told me Melissa hadn't been seen at our house in 72 hours. Our neighbor, Bill Hendricks. Wait, I needed to use a different name. Our neighbor, Bill Ramirez, had reported her car missing from our driveway on Monday morning. I'd been so buried in work, I hadn't even noticed. We had separate schedules. She taught yoga classes on Monday mornings. Except she didn't teach yoga anymore, did she? I'd been paying our insurance, our mortgage, our car payments. I'd been paying for a life that apparently didn't exist. The hospital parking garage smelled like oil and sick air. I found Keith in the ICU waiting room. He looked like he'd aged 5 years since I'd seen him at Christmas. "She's stable," he said before I could ask. "Broken hip, possible minor stroke. They're running more tests." We sat in those horrible plastic chairs that seemed designed to make everything worse. Keith handed me a coffee I didn't remember him getting. "The cops came by Mom's room an hour ago," he said quietly. "They wanted to know if she'd given Melissa anything." "David, what the hell is going on?" I told him everything. The investment opportunity, the paperwork, the signatures, the trust. Keith's jaw got tighter and tighter until he looked like he might crack a tooth. "You gave her power of attorney?" "Limited power of attorney. Just for the investment accounts. It was temporary, just to expedite the—" "Jesus Christ, David." He stood up and paced to the window. "Did you verify any of this? Did you call Amy Thornton? Did you look up this brother who supposedly works in real estate?" I hadn't. Of course I hadn't. Melissa had showed me the brochures, the spreadsheets, the testimonials. She'd shown me Amy's text messages about how excited she was that we were joining the investment group. Except now, sitting in this waiting room with my mother unconscious down the hall and my bank accounts emptied, I realized I'd never actually spoken to Amy. I'd never met Amy's brother. I'd never seen any legal documents from the development company. I'd seen what Melissa had shown me, and I'd trusted her, because that's what you do when you love someone. That's what you're supposed to do. Keith came back and sat down hard. "I called Amy Thornton's office. She's Melissa's colleague, right? Works at the same marketing firm?" "Yeah, they've been friends for like 4 years." "David, there is no Amy Thornton at Fisher Marketing Group. I spoke to their HR director. They've never had an employee by that name." The walls of the waiting room started closing in. I excused myself and found a bathroom where I threw up everything I'd eaten that day, which wasn't much. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize the person staring back. There was this guy, 36 years old, wearing a button-down shirt and slacks like he was still the David Sullivan who went to work and paid his bills and had a normal life. But that David was gone. That David had trusted his wife. That David had signed papers without reading them. That David had been so goddamn stupid. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry. I never meant for your mom to get hurt." I stared at those words until they stopped making sense. Then I screenshotted it and forwarded it to Detective Ortiz. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Another text. "You weren't supposed to find out this way. I needed more time." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. "Where are you?" No response. I tried calling the number. It rang 4 times and went to a generic voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. I sent another text. "At least tell me why." The 3 dots appeared and stayed there for 30 seconds. Then, "Because I could." Dr. Francine Walsh, the neurologist assigned to my mother's case, found me in the hallway outside her room. She'd been practicing neurology for 23 years, and she had this way of looking at people like she could see through all their bullshit. "Your mother's stable, but she's asking for you. She's pretty agitated. Keep it brief." Mom looked small in the hospital bed, which was wrong because she'd always been this larger-than-life presence. PTA president, community organizer, the woman who'd raised 2 boys alone after Dad died. There were tubes and monitors and that steady beep that meant she was alive. Her eyes found mine and filled with tears. "David, honey, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. She said you'd sent her. She had your power of attorney letter. I thought, Mom, it's okay. Don't." She took the bonds and the coin collection your father left, and she asked about the house deed, if it was in a trust or if you owned it outright. I told her about the joint tenancy. David, I gave her information about your house. The monitor started beeping faster. "Doctor," Walsh appeared at my elbow. "Mr. Sullivan, I need you to step out." But before I left, Mom grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "She asked about your father's life insurance policy, too, the one that paid out to you when he died. She wanted to know if there was any left." Keith drove me home because I wasn't safe behind a wheel. The sun was setting, turning our street into something from a postcard. Neat lawns, 2-car garages, the American dream in subdivision form. Our house looked exactly the same as always. Melissa's flower boxes still had petunias. The porch light was on the timer I'd installed last summer. I half expected her to open the door, to tell me this was all a misunderstanding, some crazy mix-up we'd laugh about someday. The lock had been changed. My key didn't work. Keith kicked the door in, just put his foot right through the frame like we were in some action movie. The house was empty. Not empty like Melissa had left. Empty like she'd never been there. The furniture was gone. The TV, the rugs, the pictures on the walls, all of it, gone. Our bedroom had nothing but carpet indentations where our bed used to be. The closets were stripped. Even the goddamn curtains were gone. Keith walked through each room in silence, then came back to where I was standing in the living room, or what used to be the living room. "How long were you at work this week?" "I pulled 3 all-nighters. The Kaufman deadline was yesterday. I slept in my office." "So she had time." "Time for what?" To move our entire house? Where would she even— My laptop. I'd left my laptop in the car. I ran outside and grabbed it, opened my email. There, buried in promotions and spam, was a message from North Star Moving Company. Thank you for choosing North Star for your relocation needs. Your household goods have been successfully delivered to the Denver location as requested. Final invoice attached. The invoice was for $18,000, charged to my credit card. Detective Ortiz came by the house at 9 p.m. with a forensics team. They took photos, dusted for prints, bagged evidence. A young officer whose nameplate read Officer J. Winters asked me questions I couldn't answer. When had I last seen my wife? Monday morning. Had she seemed different, agitated, upset? No, she'd seemed normal, happy even. Had I noticed any unusual activity on our bank accounts? I'd stopped looking. Melissa handled most of the household finances because she was better at it, more organized, more detail-oriented. You gave your wife complete access to everything, Officer Winters said. It wasn't a question. She's my wife, I said, and hated how defensive I sounded. Detective Ortiz pulled me aside while his team worked. Mr. Sullivan, I need you to understand something. This isn't a marital dispute. This is organized fraud. We're looking at identity theft, wire fraud, possibly interstate banking violations. The texts from the unknown number help establish intent. But we need more. What do you need? We need to find her. We need to trace the money. And we need you to think very carefully about every document you signed in the last 6 months. Every conversation you had about money, about assets, about plans. Everything. I thought about all those nights she'd brought me whiskey and paperwork. I thought about how she'd insisted on filing our taxes last year, said she'd found a new accountant who specialized in small business deductions. I thought about the refinance she'd suggested in January, how we could get a better rate and pull out some equity for home improvements. I'd signed everything. Of course I had. Keith made me go back to his apartment that night because sleeping in an empty house seemed like a terrible idea. His wife Jennifer had made up their guest room and left a plate of food in the microwave that I couldn't eat. I lay awake scrolling through my phone, looking at photos of Melissa. There she was at our wedding, laughing at something the photographer had said. There we were in Mexico last year, sunburned and happy. There she was last month, posing with the new coffee maker she'd been so excited about. Had any of it been real? Had she ever loved me? Or had I been the mark from day one? My phone rang at 2:47 a.m., unknown number, but not the same one that had texted before. I answered. David Sullivan? A woman's voice, older, with a slight southern accent. Yes? My name is Patricia Brennan. I'm a private investigator out of Dallas. I've been tracking your wife for 6 months. I sat up so fast I got dizzy. What? Who hired you? A man named Jeremy Costa. I think you should hear his story. She gave me an address in Dallas and told me to come tomorrow. Alone. Don't tell the police yet. Why? I asked. Because if you involve them now, she'll disappear completely. Trust me, Mr. Sullivan. I've been doing this for 28 years. I know how she operates. I told Keith I needed to handle some business stuff and borrowed his car. The drive to Dallas took 4 hours through flat Texas landscape that gave me too much time to think. Patricia Brennan's office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. She was in her 60s, gray hair pulled back, wearing practical clothes and tired eyes. The walls of her office were covered with corkboards, photos, documents, red string connecting various points like something from a detective show. Mr. Sullivan, she said, shaking my hand. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. The man sitting in the client chair turned to look at me. Jeremy Costa was maybe 30, with dark circles under his eyes and the look of someone who'd stopped sleeping well months ago. She took everything from me, too, he said. Patricia gestured for me to sit. Jeremy came to me last September. His fiancée, who he knew as Michelle Bradford, had disappeared with his business accounts, his inheritance, and his grandfather's vintage car collection. Total value, approximately $400,000. She pulled a photo from the corkboard. It was Melissa. Same face, different hair color, different style, but unmistakably my wife. Michelle Bradford, Patricia said, also went by Marissa Chen. Wait, I need to use a different name. Marissa Foster, Lisa Sullivan, and at least 3 other identities we've confirmed. Jeremy's story was eerily similar to mine. Met at a conference, whirlwind romance, moved in together within months. She'd been perfect, supportive, loving, interested in his vintage car restoration business. She'd introduced him to an investment opportunity through a colleague's brother. She'd handled paperwork, finances, everything. Then one day, she'd vanished. I filed a police report, Jeremy said. But she'd been so careful. Everything she took, I'd technically authorized. Every signature was mine, even if I didn't understand what I was signing. The police said it was a civil matter. My lawyer said I'd have to sue her, but I couldn't find her to serve her papers. Patricia tapped another photo on the board. Different woman, same eyes. This is Amanda Lee. She dated a dentist in Phoenix, took him for $200,000 over a year and a half. And this, she tapped another, is Rachel Stone. She married a software developer in Seattle, cleaned out his accounts and disappeared 3 weeks after the wedding. We've identified 11 victims over the past 8 years. Total stolen, approximately $2.3 million. I couldn't breathe. The office was too small, too hot, too real. Why hasn't she been caught? Patricia pulled out a file folder thick with documents. Because she's smart. She never uses the same method twice. She targets successful men who are emotionally vulnerable, recently divorced, grieving a parent, workaholic types who don't have time to verify details. She builds trust over months or years. She uses sophisticated identity theft and voice synthesis technology. She has multiple bank accounts across different states, and she moves frequently enough that by the time victims realize what's happened, she's already established a new identity somewhere else. How did you find all this? I asked. Patricia smiled grimly. Jeremy paid me to find her. In the process, I found the others. I've been building this case, documenting everything, waiting for the right moment to bring it to federal authorities. Interstate fraud, identity theft, wire fraud. These are federal crimes, Mr. Sullivan. But I needed enough evidence to make sure she couldn't slip away when they moved on her. And now you have it? Almost. She's gotten sloppy with you. The texts from her personal number, the moving company paper trail, the fact that she targeted your mother, that shows desperation or overconfidence. She's been in your city for 8 years, which is longer than she's ever stayed anywhere. I think she got comfortable. Jeremy leaned forward. Patricia thinks she's planning one more big score before she disappears for good. That's why she took risks with your mom, why she moved so fast. She's trying to liquidate everything before she goes dark. Goes where? That's what we need to find out, Patricia said. And you're going to help us. The plan Patricia outlined sounded like something from a movie. I'd continue cooperating with local police, but I'd also work with her. She had contacts at the FBI, specifically Agent Lawrence Kovach, who specialized in financial crimes. But before they could move, they needed to know where Melissa had stashed the money. She's taken millions, Patricia explained, but she's only been caught moving thousands at a time. That means she has accounts we haven't found. Shell corporations, offshore banks, maybe cryptocurrency. If we can trace where your money went, we can trace where everyone's money went. How do I do that? You're going to answer her texts. I stared at the unknown number on my phone. The last message still said, because I could. I started typing, I need to understand, please. 8 years should mean something. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then, meet me, tomorrow, 3 p.m., the place we got engaged. I showed Patricia. She was already moving, making calls, pulling up maps on her computer. Where did you propose? Clyde Warren Park. There's a specific bench we always sat on, northwest corner, near the food trucks. Perfect. Public place, cameras, lots of witnesses. She was texting someone rapidly. I'll have surveillance there. Kovach will position FBI agents nearby. You wear a wire, get her talking, get her to admit what she's done. What if she runs? She won't. She reached out to you, which means she wants something. Maybe closure, maybe to gloat, maybe she actually feels something. Whatever it is, we use it. I spent that night at a hotel near Patricia's office going over the plan with Agent Kovach. He was 50-ish, built like he'd played football in college, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Mr. Sullivan, I need you to understand the risks here. If she suspects you're working with us, she could disappear. We might never find her. I understand. You'll wear a wire. We'll have agents positioned around the park. Your job is simple. Get her talking. Ask about the money, the plan, the other victims. Try to get her to admit intent, that she planned this from the beginning. Can you do that? I thought about my empty house, my mother in the hospital, Jeremy's haunted eyes. Yeah, I can do that. Kovach handed me a small device that looked like a button. This goes on your shirt. Don't touch it, don't mention it. Just talk normally. We'll hear everything. That night I rehearsed questions in my head. Why me? Why 8 years? What was real? But I knew the real question, the only one that mattered. How could I have been so blind? I thought about all the signs I'd missed. The way she'd always been vague about her childhood, her family, her life before me. The way she'd discouraged me from meeting her parents, always had an excuse why holidays didn't work out. The way she'd kept her finances separate at first, said it was important to maintain independence. I'd thought she was modern, independent, smart. She'd been preparing an exit. I got to Clyde Warren Park at 2:30 p.m., wearing the wire under a casual button-down shirt, jeans, trying to look like someone meeting his wife for a difficult conversation. The park was busy, families with kids, food trucks doing lunch rush, people walking dogs. I found our bench, the one where I'd proposed on a spring evening 7 years ago. I'd been so nervous that day, the ring box practically burning through my pocket. She'd said yes before I even finished asking. She'd cried. Had those tears been real? At exactly 3 p.m., I saw her. She looked different. Darker hair, cut shorter, different clothes than she usually wore. But it was her, my wife. The woman I'd shared a bed with, made breakfast with, planned a future with. She sat down on the bench, leaving space between us. Hi, David. Her voice was the same. God, her voice was exactly the same. Hi, Melissa. Or is it Michelle? Or Marissa? I'm losing track. She winced. It's complicated. Try me. I've got time, unlike my bank accounts, which seem to have all the time in the world to be empty. I deserve that. You deserve a lot more than that. I was gripping the edge of the bench so hard my knuckles were white. Kovacs had told me to stay calm, stay conversational, but sitting next to her, smelling her familiar perfume, seeing her hands that had held mine, touched my face, signed my name on documents, I wanted to scream. Why? I managed. Melissa, I couldn't think of her as anyone else, stared at the park. Kids were playing on the lawn. A couple was having a picnic. Normal life, happening all around us. I was 17 when I figured out I could do this, she said quietly. I was working at a grocery store, watching these successful men come through my line, talking on their phones about deals and investments and money. And I thought, I'm smarter than most of them. Why should they have everything when I have nothing? So you became a con artist. I became someone who took what she needed to survive. She turned to look at me. You want me to say I'm sorry? That I didn't mean for it to go this far? I can't. Because I meant every step, David. Every signature, every transfer, every lie. The wire was recording every word. I could see FBI agents positioned around the park, a man walking a dog, a woman reading on another bench, a couple arguing near the food trucks, all of them watching us. 8 years, I said. Why 8 years? Why not take everything and leave after 1? Because I liked you. She said it simply, like it was obvious. I actually liked you, David. You were kind and funny and you never talked down to me. I thought maybe I could do this one differently. Maybe I could marry you and be the person you thought I was. But you couldn't. No. Because that person doesn't exist. She never did. I felt something crack inside my chest. The investment opportunity, Amy Thornton's brother, the shopping complex in Austin. Was any of that real? Of course not. Amy Thornton is a fake LinkedIn profile I created 3 years ago. The brochures were stock photos in Photoshop. The testimonials were written by me. The whole thing was designed to make you feel smart for trusting me. And my mom? Her expression flickered. Guilt, maybe, or something close to it. I didn't mean for her to fall. I just needed the bonds. She wasn't supposed to get hurt. But she did. She's in the hospital with a broken hip and possible stroke because you couldn't wait 1 more day. I was running out of time. For the first time, Melissa's composure cracked. The divorce lawyer I hired to study marriage law in 12 states, he figured out what I was doing. Threatened to report me unless I cut him in. I needed to liquidate everything and get out before he sold me out. So you destroyed my life because someone threatened yours? That's your justification? I destroyed a lot of lives, David. Yours isn't special. The cold flatness in her voice was worse than anger. This was who she really was. Someone who could sit next to me on the bench where we'd gotten engaged and tell me I wasn't special while wearing my grandmother's ring on her finger. Wait, no. The ring was gone. I grabbed her hand. Where's the ring? She pulled away. Sold it last week. 2-carat diamond, vintage setting, got $12,000 for it. Something in me snapped. You sold my grandmother's ring, the one my dad proposed to my mom with, the one that was in our family for 60 years. It was just jewelry, David. It's all just stuff. Money, houses, cars, rings. None of it matters. It mattered to me. You mattered to me. I know. She stood up. That's what made it so easy. Agent Kovacs was moving. I could see him signaling the other agents, closing in. Melissa saw it too. Her eyes went wide, scanning the park, calculating escape routes. You wore a wire. It wasn't a question. You wore a wire to meet your wife? You're not my wife. I don't know who you are. FBI agents converged from 3 directions. Kovacs had his badge out. Melissa Sullivan, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and interstate banking violations. You have the right to remain silent. She ran, just bolted off the bench and sprinted toward the street. But the woman who'd been reading on the bench, Agent Lisa Thornton, I'd learn later, tackled her professionally, getting her down on the grass while children screamed and parents grabbed their kids. It took 3 agents to cuff her. She fought the whole way, screaming that I'd betrayed her, that I'd promised to love her, that I was just like all the others. I stood there on our bench, watching the woman I'd loved get arrested, and felt absolutely nothing. Just a vast, empty space where 8 years of my life used to be. If this story keeps your interest, please subscribe to get more stories like this. The next 72 hours were a blur of police stations, FBI offices, lawyers, and paperwork. Agent Kovacs brought in Jeremy and the other victims. We gave statements, compared notes, filled in gaps in the timeline. Patricia's investigation had been thorough, but what we provided, the texts, the emails, the recorded confession from the park, sealed it. The FBI forensic accountants found the money. Most of it, anyway. Melissa had been careful, spreading it across shell corporations and cryptocurrency accounts, but she'd gotten sloppy toward the end. The divorce lawyer she'd mentioned, his name was Nathan Cross, and he'd been running his own con, threatening to expose criminals unless they paid him off. The FBI got him too. 2 birds, 1 investigation. My mother recovered slowly. The doctors said she'd been lucky. The stroke was minor, the hip would heal. but she cried when I told her what Melissa had been. I gave her information about your house, your finances. I helped her rob you. Mom, you didn't know. None of us knew. But she'd known something was wrong. She'd called me 8 times that night, trying to warn me. I'd been too busy to answer. I'd been at work, chasing a deadline, trusting that my wife was at home being normal. The house was a mess legally. Melissa had forged my signature on a quitclaim deed, transferring ownership to an LLC she controlled. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Grace Kowalski, who specialized in fraud cases, said we could reverse it, but it would take months. Mr. Sullivan, your wife committed at least 15 felonies in your case alone. She's looking at 25 years minimum. You'll get restitution, but it won't be fast, and it won't be easy. The trial happened faster than I expected. Federal prosecutors had so much evidence that Melissa's public defender advised her to plead guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. She refused. She wanted her day in court. She wanted to tell her story. The courtroom was packed. All 11 confirmed victims were there, plus dozens of others who'd come forward after her arrest made the news. The prosecutor, a steely woman named Diana Foster, who'd been handling financial crimes for 15 years, laid out the case with devastating precision. 8 years of fraud, 13 identities, $2.7 million stolen, fake documents, voice synthesis software, shell corporations in 4 states. Melissa's lawyer tried to argue coercion, that she'd been forced into this life by circumstances, by poverty, by men who'd taken advantage of her. The prosecutor destroyed that argument by showing Melissa's bank statements. Luxury hotels in Paris, designer clothes, a storage unit full of jewelry and art. This wasn't survival, Diana said, gesturing to the evidence. This was a lifestyle choice. And these men, she pointed to us in the gallery, these victims, paid for it with their life savings, their homes, their trust, their futures. When they asked me to testify, I told them about the 8 years, about meeting her at a mutual friend's party, about thinking I'd found someone who understood me, about the slow accumulation of trust, how she'd been there when Dad died, how she'd supported my career, how we'd talked about kids and retirement and growing old together. I told them about signing the papers, about believing in Amy Thornton's brother, about the empty house, and I told them about the bench in Clyde Warren Park, where she'd admitted it was all a lie. Melissa's lawyer tried to shake me on cross-examination. Mr. Sullivan, isn't it true that you never actually verified any of the investment information? Yes. And isn't it true that you signed legal documents without reading them thoroughly? Yes. So you bear some responsibility for your own losses, don't you? I looked at Melissa, sitting at the defense table in a neat blouse and slacks, looking nothing like the woman who'd run from the FBI. I take responsibility for trusting my wife. I don't take responsibility for her being a criminal. The lawyer switched tactics. Did Mrs. Sullivan ever directly threaten you? Did she ever force you to sign anything? No. She manipulated me. There's a difference. Manipulation isn't illegal, Mr. Sullivan. Then what we're doing here today is a waste of time. The judge sustained the prosecutor's objection, but the point was made. When Melissa took the stand in her own defense, I thought I'd feel something. Anger, betrayal, sadness. But I just felt tired. She told a story about growing up poor, about learning early that the world didn't care about people like her. She talked about abusive relationships, about men who'd used her, about deciding to use them back. She painted herself as a victim who'd become a survivor, who'd only taken from people who could afford to lose it. The prosecutor's cross-examination was brutal. Ms. Sullivan, you testified that you only targeted wealthy men. What was Mr. Sullivan's net worth when you married him? I'm not sure exactly. According to the financial documents you yourself submitted as part of the investment scheme, his net worth was approximately $180,000. That includes his house, his car, and his retirement account. Does that qualify as wealthy? It's more than most people have. It's middle class. Mr. Costa, who you knew as Michelle Bradford, what was his net worth? I don't remember. The court documents show $320,000, mostly from his deceased grandfather's estate. He was using that money to expand his vintage car restoration business, his dream. You destroyed that dream. How was that survival? Melissa didn't answer. Diana kept going, walking her through each victim, each lie, each calculated manipulation. By the end, Melissa's story of survival had collapsed. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they came back, the foreman read guilty verdicts on all 27 counts. Melissa's face didn't change. She just sat there, stone-faced, while the judge set a sentencing date. At sentencing 2 weeks later, the judge, the Honorable Patricia Montgomery, 58 years on the bench, heard victim impact statements from all 11 of us. Jeremy talked about losing his grandfather's car collection, a legacy he'd planned to pass to his own children someday. Amanda Lee's dentist talked about having to delay retirement by 10 years. The software developer from Seattle talked about his divorce. His real wife had left him when she'd learned how much money he'd lost. When it was my turn, I'd planned to talk about the money, the house, the betrayal. But standing there in the courtroom, looking at Melissa in her orange jumpsuit, I realized the money wasn't what hurt most. Your Honor, I said, Melissa Sullivan stole 8 years of my life. Every memory I have with her is contaminated now. I can't look at wedding photos without feeling sick. I can't remember our anniversary without wondering when exactly she decided to rob me. She didn't just steal my money. She stole my past, my trust in myself, my ability to believe in good things. And I'll never get that back. Judge Montgomery looked at Melissa. Does the defendant have anything to say? Melissa stood. I'm sorry that these men feel hurt, but I'm not sorry for taking care of myself. I did what I had to do to survive in a world that wasn't made for people like me. The judge's expression hardened. Ms. Sullivan, this court has heard your explanations and found them wanting. You weren't surviving. You were stealing. You targeted vulnerable people, exploited their trust, and showed no remorse for the devastation you caused. The sentence of this court is 32 years in federal prison, with restitution to all victims to be determined by the civil courts. You will be eligible for parole in 20 years. 32 years. Melissa would be 68 when she got out. I'd be 68. We'd both be old. The difference was, I'd be free. The FBI recovered about 40% of the stolen money. Patricia's investigation had helped trace accounts Melissa thought were hidden. My share came to about $70,000, less than half what she'd taken from me, but more than I'd expected to ever see again. The house situation resolved after 8 months of legal wrangling. Grace Kowalski managed to void the quitclaim deed and restore my ownership. I sold it immediately. Couldn't live there anymore. Couldn't walk into that empty living room without seeing furniture that wasn't there. I moved to a smaller place across town, somewhere with no memories of Melissa. Jeremy and I stayed in touch. We'd formed this weird support group, the Melissa Survivors Club, he called it, dark humor helping us cope. Patricia Brennan refused payment for her help, said catching Melissa had been reward enough. Agent Kovach closed the case and moved on to the next one. Life kept happening around me. Mom recovered and sold her house, moved into a senior community where she couldn't fall downstairs. Keith's wife, Jennifer, had a baby. My nephew, Marcus, wait, I can't use that name. My nephew, Oliver. I got promoted at work, threw myself into projects, tried to rebuild a life that felt real. Some days were better than others. Some days I'd see a woman with blonde hair and my heart would stop before I remembered Melissa's hair was dark now, and besides, she was in federal prison. Some days I'd meet someone nice, a colleague, a friend of a friend, and think about asking them out. But then I'd remember signing papers I didn't read, and I'd make an excuse to leave. A year after the trial, Patricia called me. David, you should see this. She sent me a link to a news article. Nathan Cross, the divorce lawyer who'd been blackmailing Melissa, had been sentenced to 18 years for his own crimes. But that wasn't the news. The news was what he'd told investigators. Melissa wasn't working alone. She had a partner. The partner's name was Gabriel Stone. He was 46, a former insurance investigator who'd figured out how to exploit legal loopholes in identity theft cases. He'd been running cons for 20 years before meeting Melissa at some criminal networking event. Yes, apparently those exist. They'd worked together on the last 6 victims, including me. Gabriel had been the one creating the fake documents, the shell corporations, the overseas accounts. Melissa had been the face, the actress, the one who built trust. Together, they'd been nearly unstoppable. The FBI had been looking for Gabriel since Melissa's arrest, but he'd vanished. Patricia thought he was in Costa Rica or the Philippines, somewhere without extradition treaties. He got away with it, she said on the phone. He's living somewhere tropical on millions of stolen dollars while Melissa rots in prison. She must hate that, I said. Oh, she does. I spoke to the prosecutor. Melissa's been trying to make a deal. She'll give up Gabriel's location in exchange for a reduced sentence, but she doesn't actually know where he is. He cut ties the moment she got arrested. Classic criminal behavior. Save yourself. Abandon your partner. I thought about Melissa in federal prison, realizing she'd been conned too. There was poetry in that. What happens now? Now we wait. Gabriel will slip up eventually. They always do. He'll use a credit card in his real name, or contact someone from his old life, or just get too comfortable. And when he does, we'll get him. But I didn't care about Gabriel. He was someone else's problem, another chapter in a story I was trying to close. What I cared about was healing, about figuring out how to trust again, about building a life that didn't revolve around what had been taken from me. 18 months after the sentencing, I went on a first date. Her name was Claire Bennett, and she worked in architecture. We'd met at a conference. I know, terrible idea given my history. But she was funny and smart, and when she laughed, it was real. We went to a coffee shop, talked for 3 hours about nothing important. Movies, books, the terrible traffic in our city. Normal things, easy things. At the end, when she asked if I wanted to do it again, I almost said no. Almost ran back to my safe, lonely apartment where nobody could con me because I didn't let anyone in. But I thought about Melissa in prison, about Gabriel on some beach somewhere, about letting them steal my future along with my past. Yeah, I told Claire. I'd like that. We took it slow, really slow. Months before I let her meet my family. A year before I told her the whole story about Melissa. Claire listened without judgment, asked questions, never made me feel stupid for trusting someone I'd loved. David, she said when I'd finished, you weren't stupid. You were human. Humans trust people they love. That's not a weakness. It's what makes us human. Even when it destroys us? Even then. Because the alternative is being like her, never connecting, never trusting, never being real. Is that really what you want? It wasn't. I'd spent 18 months being angry at myself for trusting Melissa, for signing papers, for not seeing the signs. But maybe the signs weren't meant to be seen. Maybe that was the whole point of a good con. It looked real because it was real, except for the part that mattered most. I married Claire 3 years after meeting her. Small wedding, immediate family only, no engagement bench in a public park. Before I proposed, I told her everything again. Every detail of the Melissa disaster, every fear I still carried, every way I might screw this up because I was damaged goods. She listened patiently, then said, "David, I'm not Melissa. I have my own money, my own career, my own life. I'm not here to take anything from you except maybe some closet space and the left side of the bed. What if I can't trust you the way I should? Then we work on it, together. That's what marriage is, trusting someone enough to be vulnerable, even when it's scary, especially when it's scary." We got a prenup, not because Claire wanted one, but because I needed one. My lawyer drew it up, detailed and clear. Claire signed it without complaint, even suggested adding clauses I hadn't thought of. "I want you to feel safe," she said. "If a piece of paper helps, I'm happy to sign it." The wedding was perfect. Small, intimate, real. Mom cried happy tears. Keith gave a speech about how proud Dad would be that I'd found someone worth trusting. Claire's family welcomed me like I'd always been part of them. For the first time in 5 years, I felt like maybe I was going to be okay. Maybe I was already okay. Gabriel Stone was arrested 4 years after Melissa's sentencing. He'd gotten sloppy in Manila, used his real passport at a luxury hotel. The FBI extradited him, charged him with 23 counts of fraud. His trial was shorter than Melissa's. He took a plea deal, 20 years in exchange for returning some of the hidden money. I got another check, this one for $40,000. Blood money, Claire called it, but money nonetheless. We used it as a down payment on a house, a real house, one with no ghosts, no memories of signing my life away at the kitchen table. Patricia called to tell me the news about Gabriel. "It's over," she said. "They're both in prison. Justice served." Justice, I repeated. The word felt hollow. Yes, they were in prison. Yes, I'd gotten some money back. But 8 years of my life were still gone. My ability to trust easily was still damaged. My mother still had a limp from where she fell. "David?" Patricia's voice was gentle. "I know it doesn't fix everything, but it's something." "Yeah," I said. "It's something." Claire was in the kitchen making dinner. Our cat, her idea, and she'd been right, the cat helped, was asleep on the couch. This was my life now. Small, quiet, real. Not the life I'd planned with Melissa, but a better one. An honest one. 5 years after Melissa's sentencing, I got a letter from federal prison. Her handwriting on the envelope, I recognized it from years of grocery lists and birthday cards and forged documents. My first instinct was to burn it. My second was to read it. Claire said it was my choice. I opened it in my office, alone. "Dear David," it started, and I almost stopped there. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. I know what I did was unforgivable. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I'm writing because my therapist here says I need to take accountability for my actions to understand the human cost of what I did. So here it is. I destroyed your life. I stole your money, your trust, your sense of safety in the world. I did it knowingly, willingly, because it was easier than being honest, easier than being real. You asked me once what was real between us. The truth is, some of it was. I did like you. I did enjoy our life together. But I enjoyed the money more, and I enjoyed the game most of all. The thrill of knowing I was getting away with it, that you trusted me completely while I was planning your destruction. That made me feel powerful. That made me feel in control. I'm not that person anymore. Prison has a way of stripping away all the lies you tell yourself. I see now what I did. I see the devastation. Jeremy lost his grandfather's legacy. The dentist lost his retirement. You lost 8 years and your ability to trust. I did that. Me. Not poverty, not my childhood, not society. Me. I chose to hurt people because it benefited me. I'm serving 32 years, and I deserve every day of it. Gabriel got 20, which feels light considering he was the architect of most of our schemes. But that's not my problem anymore. He abandoned me the second I got arrested, just like I abandoned you when I had what I needed. Turns out we were perfect for each other. I hope you've rebuilt. I hope you found someone worth trusting. I hope you're happy, David. Not because I deserve to know you're okay, but because you deserve to be okay despite me. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't mean much, but I'm sorry. Melissa. I read the letter 3 times, looking for the angle, the con, the hidden manipulation, but it just seemed like a woman in prison, facing 32 years of consequences, finally understanding what she'd done. I showed it to Claire that night. She read it carefully, then looked at me. "Do you believe her?" "I don't know. Maybe. Does it matter? Do you feel better? Worse? Different? I thought about it. Did I feel vindicated that she was sorry? Angry that it took 5 years and a prison sentence for her to see the damage? Relieved that she acknowledged what she'd done? I feel sad, I realized. For her, for me, for everyone she hurt. Just sad. Claire pulled me close. That's okay. Sadness is appropriate. What she did was sad. What happened to you was sad. You're allowed to feel that without needing to forgive her or hate her or anything else. I kept the letter in a drawer somewhere. Not to reread, not to dwell on, just to remember. Remember that people are capable of terrible things. Remember that trust is a gift, not a guarantee. Remember that healing doesn't mean forgetting. 6 years after Melissa's sentencing, Claire and I had a daughter. We named her Lucy, after Claire's grandmother. Holding her in the hospital, this tiny, perfect person who trusted me completely, I finally understood something. Melissa had taken 8 years of my past, but she hadn't taken my future. She hadn't taken my ability to love, to trust, to build something real. She'd made it harder, sure. She'd made me cautious, careful, maybe too slow to believe in good things. But I was still here, still capable of holding my daughter and promising her that I'd be worthy of her trust. Still capable of looking at my wife and believing in us. Still capable of hoping for better things. Patricia retired that year, closed her investigation business, moved to somewhere quiet. We exchanged Christmas cards. Jeremy got married too, to a woman he'd known in college, someone from before Melissa, someone real. The Melissa Survivors Club disbanded, not because we weren't still survivors, but because we'd become more than that. We'd become people who'd survived and kept living. Agent Kovacs died of a heart attack 2 years after the trial. His obituary mentioned the Melissa Sullivan case as one of his major accomplishments. I went to his funeral, stood in the back, thanked him silently for believing the truth when it would have been easier to dismiss it as a marital dispute. The world kept turning. Melissa kept serving her sentence. Gabriel kept serving his. The money was gone, the house was sold, the ring was in some pawn shop somewhere. But I had Lucy. I had Claire. I had a life that was mine, built on choices I'd made, trust I'd earned, love that was real. 10 years after that day on the bench in Clyde Warren Park, I took Lucy there. She was 4 years old, obsessed with ducks, delighted by the food trucks. We sat on the bench, not the same bench, I couldn't quite handle that, but one nearby, and fed pieces of bread to the ducks. "Daddy, why are we here?" Lucy asked, throwing bread with the wild inaccuracy of a 4-year-old. "I used to come here a long time ago, with someone I thought I knew." "Do you still know them?" "No, baby, I don't." "That's sad." "Yeah, it is." She climbed into my lap, sticky hands and all, and we watched the ducks fight over bread. Claire joined us, bringing coffee and that easy smile I'd learned to trust. My phone buzzed. A news alert. Melissa Sullivan, convicted fraudster, granted early parole after demonstrating exemplary rehabilitation. I deleted it without reading further. Whatever happened to Melissa now was her story, not mine. My story was here, in this park, with these people, in this moment of casual, ordinary happiness that no one could forge or fake or steal. "Daddy?" Lucy tugged my shirt. "Yeah, baby? Can we get ice cream?" "Absolutely." We got ice cream. We went home. We lived our lives. And that, after everything, was enough. That night, after Lucy was asleep and Claire was reading in bed, I stood at my office window looking at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Melissa was walking free, starting over, maybe planning her next move. Or maybe she'd actually changed. I'd never know. But I knew this. She'd told me to trust her, and I should have asked what she meant. Should have verified, investigated, protected myself better. But if I'd done all that, I would have become someone who never trusted anyone, and that would have been its own kind of prison. So instead, I'd trusted, been destroyed, rebuilt, and learned to trust again. Carefully, thoughtfully, with open eyes. And maybe that was the real victory. Not the prison sentence or the money recovered or the justice served. The victory was standing here, in a house I owned free and clear, with a family I'd chosen, a life I'd built, and the knowledge that despite everything Melissa had taken, she hadn't taken the most important thing, my ability to believe in good things, in real things. In love, that wasn't a con. I turned off the lights and went to bed. Tomorrow, Lucy had preschool. Claire had a big meeting. I had work, normal stuff, regular life, the kind of life Melissa had pretended to want, but never could actually have. Because real life requires real trust, real vulnerability, real love. And those were things Melissa Sullivan, whatever her real name was, would never understand. My wife told me to trust her. I should have asked what she meant. But I'd learned the answer now. Trust isn't about blind faith. It's about choosing carefully who deserves it, protecting yourself without closing off completely, and building something worth trusting in. 8 years gone, but a lifetime ahead. That was math I could live with. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.